Welcome to the Phil and H Travel Podcast. Is it worth it?
Thank you. It is, it's great to be here to dig into this one.
Yeah, because today we are targeting a destination that, honestly, it completely defies the standard European capital formula.
Oh, absolutely. It breaks all the rules.
Right. So I want you to imagine this. You step off a pristine, hypermodern metro train, and it just costs you €1.
Which is wild in 2026.
Exactly. And you walk through the station concourse, and you're casually stepping around 2,000-year-old excavated Roman ruins. Like they're integrated right into the floor.
Just right there on your commute.
Yeah. So you head up the escalator, and you're probably expecting to emerge into this polished, pristine European square. But instead, you're dragging your suitcase onto this crumbling, cracked concrete pavement.
And the sensory hit is immediate.
It really is. You're hit by this heavy scent of a local bakery, but it's, mingling with the exhaust of a 1980s tram and this ever-present haze of cigarette smoke.
That is the perfect description of arriving in Sofia, Bulgaria.
Right. So we are unpacking the 2026 reality of Sofia. And our mission today is very specific. We are trying to figure out if this city is genuinely this brilliant, underpriced secret that the rest of the continent has somehow missed.
Or if it's a trap.
Exactly. Or if it is just this scruffy, unfinished bargain that requires entirely too much work from you, the traveler, to actually enjoy. Okay, let's unpack this.
Well, it really is the defining question for Sofia right now, because when you look at the landscape of European travel in 2026, Sofia stands out by being explicitly, almost defiantly, not a fairy tale destination.
No, it's definitely not giving you that Disney vibe.
Not at all. If you fly into the city expecting like the manicured, preserved cobblestone streets of Bruges or that pristine curation of central Vienna, the psychological whiplash is going to be severe.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah, Sofia is a city defined entirely by jarring contradictions. I mean, the visual landscape is staggering when you actually stop to analyze it. You have these ancient Roman walls sitting completely unprotected next to massive modern traffic jams.
All right, just exhaust fumes blowing right onto a Roman column.
Exactly, and then you turn a corner and see these stunning gold-domed Neo-Byzantine Orthodox churches. And right beside them, stark, brutalist concrete apartment blocks from the communist era.
It's quite the juxtaposition.
And hovering over all of it is Vitosha Mountain, which, offers incredible alpine views, unless it's, say, a Tuesday in February and the entire massif has just disappeared behind this thick, gray smog inversion.
So it's decidedly unpolished. But, I look at the financial data for 2026, and I see exactly why we need to talk about this deep dive today.
The prices in Western Europe right now are out of control.
They really are. The major capitals, London, Paris, Amsterdam, Barcelona, they've reached a point where the pricing is almost hostile to normal people. Like you physically wince every time you order a coffee.
It's just exhausting for your wallet.
So Sofia matters because it remains one of the last European capitals where you can, theoretically, execute a proper multi-day city break without feeling like you are being financially punished for simply existing in a tourist zone.
Yes, the financial relief is totally real. But, and this is a massive but, we need to put some serious guardrails around the whole cheap Sofia label.
Because it's not cheap everywhere, right?
Right. Operating under the assumption that the entire city is universally cheap is one of the most dangerous things a traveler can do.
Interesting. Walk me through that.
Well, yes, the baseline economics are incredibly favorable compared to Rome or Paris. If you're a backpacker, the math still works to survive on 35 to 50 euros a day.
Wow, 35 to 50 euros in 2026.
Yeah, it's a living reality. But you have to utilize hostels, live off the local bakery culture, shop at supermarkets, and use the municipal transit network.
Makes sense. What about someone who wants a bit more comfort?
Even for a mid-range traveler, someone who wants a private room, sit-down dinners with wine, museum access, occasional taxis, the daily spend sits really comfortably between 75 and 120 euros.
Which is still phenomenal value.
It is. But that overarching affordability creates a very specific psychological blind spot for visitors.
Because if you think everything is a bargain, your guard drops.
Right.
You just stop looking at the menus and you start making assumptions.
Precisely. And the traps in Sofia, they don't hide. They operate right out in the open, and they prey on that exact traveler complacency.
So they're just waiting for you to drop your guard.
Oh, absolutely. Central European, Parisian-level prices are quietly waiting for you on the most obvious, heavily foot-trafficked strips. If your cheap flight lands at midnight, and you just hop into the first unmarked car idling at the curb, you will pay a massive premium.
Because you just assumed it would be cheap.
Exactly. And if you sit down at a brightly lit restaurant with an English menu right on the main boulevard, you will pay Western prices for remarkably average food.
So you really have to be intentional.
You do. To really gauge Sofia's value, you have to contextualize it against its regional neighbors. Budapest sells you sheer imperial Austro-Hungarian grandeur.
Yeah, it's very grand.
And Prague sells you absolute preserved post-Knug beauty. Bucharest sells you massive, Paris of the East scale and chaotic nightlife. But Sofia doesn't package its identity into a neat, marketable aesthetic like that.
I look at the historical data from our sources,
Yeah.
and it feels like looking at a geological core sample.
Yeah.
You've got Orthodox, Communist, Ottoman, and Roman layers just completely mashed together.
Mashed together is the perfect way to put it.
It feels like buying a fixer-upper house.
Yeah.
You know, like the bones are incredible, the foundation is historic, but you have to be willing to roll up your sleeves and do the physical and mental work to turn it into something you can actually appreciate. You can't just walk in and expect a magazine spread.
I actually have to push back a little on the fixer-upper analogy.
Oh, why is that?
Because it implies that you, the traveler, have the agency to physically improve or, fix the city during your stay, and you don't. Sofia isn't going to change for you.
That's a fair point. It is what it is.
Right. It's more like watching a brilliant but challenging avant-garde documentary instead of a Hollywood blockbuster. The city demands that you do the emotional and intellectual lifting.
So you can't just passively consume it.
Exactly. The question isn't whether Sofia is cheap. The data proves it is. The critical question is whether that low cost buys a profound experience.
Right, because cheap doesn't always mean good.
If your entire itinerary consists of walking up and down Vitosha Boulevard, taking a quick selfie in front of the Alexander Nevsky Cathedral, and then retreating to an Irish pub, your experience will be remarkably hollow.
You're just skimming the absolute surface of a very deep pool. To get the value, you really have to engage with the local rhythm, right? Like eating the warm banitsa at 7 a.m., navigating the metro, standing by the mineral springs.
Yes, you have to get into the friction of the city.
But you can't do any of that exploring if the weather makes you want to lock yourself in your hotel room. And the climate here isn't just background noise. It fundamentally dictates the value of the trip. This is a hardcore four-season city.
It really is, and the seasons drastically alter not just your comfort, but the logistical reality of the city. We really need to break down the meteorology and the calendar.
Let's do it. Let's start with the absolute cheapest window.
So that would be January and February. And the financial incentive here is massive. Accommodation prices plummet 25 to 40% below the spring baseline.
Wow.
Yeah, you can secure a highly central, very comfortable mid-range room for an astonishing 55 to 80 euros a night.
That is absurdly cheap for a capital city. But what's the catch?
The environmental cost is very steep. Sofia sits in a valley, which creates a severe winter temperature inversion, so the cold air gets trapped, pulling down the wood smoke and car exhaust.
So it's smoggy.
Very. The skies are deeply, heavily gray. And that brutalist concrete architecture, it looks incredibly bleak in that light.
Sounds kind of depressing, honestly.
Unless your explicit strategy is to use Sofia purely as an indoor budget base for museum hopping and long cafe sessions, or, you're banking on a snowstorm up on Vitosha Mountain for winter sports, it is a really tough time to wander the streets.
Okay, so then the calendar flips to March, and you think, great, spring is coming.
Yeah.
But from what the historical weather data suggests, you aren't really getting spring. You are just trading the frozen gray smog for relentless slushy mud.
Yeah, March is the transition month, and transitions in the Balkans are messy. The snowmelt from the mountain comes down, the unpaved side streets get really sloppy, and the city just feels washed out.
But I'm guessing prices are still low.
Prices are still rock bottom, and you won't see crowds, but the aesthetic is rough. April is where the dynamic finally shifts.
Oh, good.
The days lengthen, the massive city parks start to turn green, and the value is excellent. But April contains a massive logistical variable, Orthodox Easter.
Right, because the Orthodox calendar is often weeks behind the Catholic and Protestant Easter. How does that actually disrupt a traveler's plan on the ground?
It completely upends domestic travel patterns. Bulgarians return to their hometowns, certain restaurants close, public transport runs on holiday schedules, and then there's a surge in regional tourism as people visit the major monasteries.
So you can't just wing it.
No, it requires you to double-check every single opening hour. Which brings us to the primary sweet spot, May and June.
The golden window.
Exactly. This is when the city's true personality emerges. The massive outdoor cafe culture activates. The hiking trails up Vitosha clear of snow and become incredibly accessible.
What happens to the hotel prices then?
They do rise to reflect the demand. You're looking at 80 to 130 euros a night for that central mid-range room, but it is a deeply realistic, fair price for the energy you get.
Okay, but then we hit July and August. And this breaks the usual European rule. Usually August in Europe is prime time, but here it sounds borderline dangerous. Why is Sofia in August worse than, say, Madrid or Rome?
It comes down to the urban geography and the lack of coastal relief. Sofia is landlocked and heavily paved. During July and August, the city just bakes.
Like an oven.
Exactly. The massive concrete squares and wide, exposed boulevards absorb the sun all day and radiate it back at you. It becomes a concrete griddle.
Ouch.
But here's the fascinating economic quirk. Business hotels actually drop their prices in August because corporate and government travel halts.
Oh, wow. So you can get a luxury room for cheap.
You can get a great room rate, yeah. But the physical reality of walking the city is exhausting. You absolutely must adopt a Mediterranean siesta schedule. You explore from 8 a.m. to noon, retreat to air conditioning, and do not emerge until the sun goes down.
Which means September and early October become the highly coveted secondary sweet spot. The heat breaks, the local residents come back from the Black Sea coast, and the city regains its normal rhythm.
Exactly. The mountain foliage turns beautiful, the temperatures are comfortable for all-day walking, and the prices hover at a very reasonable 10 to 25% premium over the winter lows. It's an incredibly smart time to book.
But what about the back end of autumn? Late October and November. The pricing drops again, but the sources describe it as moody.
Moody is a nice word for it.
Let me press you on this. Is moody just marketing speak for genuinely miserable?
Yeah.
Because if I'm a budget traveler who loves the dark academia aesthetic, like sitting in a dimly lit, wood-paneled cafe with a thick book and a strong espresso, watching rain streak the window of a socialist-era building, does November actually deliver that vibe, or will I just be cold and wet?
Well, if that specific insulated cafe aesthetic is exactly what you want, November will deliver it perfectly and for very little money.
Okay, good to know.
But we have to be honest about the broader experience. For a traveler who wants to actually see the Roman ruins, walk the yellow brick roads, and hike the mountain, November borders on miserable.
So it's not great for sightseeing?
Not at all.
Okay.
Rougher edges of Sofia, the cracked pavements, the graffiti, the brutalist blocks, they're much harder to romanticize when your shoes are soaked through and the wind is cutting right through your jacket.
And what about December?
December shifts the narrative again because the holiday lights go up and the Christmas markets open. It becomes highly atmospheric, but it is completely at the mercy of the weather. It can be crisp, white, and magical, or it can be a grim, slushy mess.
So the data leaves us with a very clear hierarchy here. May, June, September, and early October are the elite, no-compromise months. April and December are completely conditional on the calendar and the weather. January, February, and November are for extreme budget travelers willing to endure the gray. And July and August require serious heat management.
That is the definitive seasonal breakdown, yeah.
So let's assume the listener takes our advice. They book mid-May, the weather's perfect, the plane touches down. We really need to talk about the immediate reality of arriving in this city because the airport logistics are shockingly favorable.
Oh, it is one of the greatest logistical victories of any European capital.
Really? That good?
Absolutely. The moment you clear customs at Sofia Airport, you have direct access to a metro system that is relentlessly efficient, impeccably clean, and wildly affordable.
And how much are we talking?
The ticket costs roughly €1. And within 30 minutes, you are standing in the exact geographical center of the city.
That's incredible.
When you compare that to the €20 express trains in London or the chaotic bus transfers in Rome, Sofia's promise of deep value validates itself the exact moment you arrive.
But let's be practical for a second. If I've been flying for 14 hours, I have 2 heavy suitcases, and it's midnight, I am not navigating a subterranean transit network, even for a single euro. What is the alternative?
And that's totally fair. The official taxi infrastructure from the airport is very sound, provided you follow the strict protocol.
Which is?
If you go to the official taxi rank and use the mandated operator, or honestly, better yet, pull out your phone and use a legitimate local ride-hailing app, a proper metered ride into the absolute center will cost between 12 and 20 euros.
That's really good.
Yeah, the exact price fluctuates based on traffic and the time of day, but it is incredibly reasonable.
Getting from point A to point B is just the mechanical reality, though. Let's talk about the psychological reality. When you emerge from that metro station at Serdika, or when that taxi drops you on the curb, what actually hits your senses?
It is a profound sensory assault, and frankly, it is rarely love at first sight.
I can imagine.
The first hour in Sofia is a chaotic, gritty mix. You hear the high-pitched hum of electric tram wires overhead. You hear the aggressive, unfiltered roar of traffic pushing down the boulevards.
Lots of noise.
Lots of noise, and you will immediately inhale the distinct, sharp smell of cigarette smoke wafting from the outdoor cafe terraces, which is instantly countered by the rich, yeasty scent of cheese and dough from a street corner bakery.
It sounds overwhelming.
It is, and just as you are processing this very raw urban grime, you'll turn down a side street and be physically stopped in your tracks by sudden, overwhelming architectural drama like the massive golden domes of the Alexander Nevsky Cathedral just catching the afternoon light.
Looking at the trajectory of a first-time visitor, it seems like the first 24 hours are a massive psychological roller coaster.
It maps out predictably almost every time. Hour 1 is euphoria. You are on the metro, looking at your €1 ticket, thinking you have totally hacked European travel.
I'm a genius.
Right. Then hour 3 is deep frustration. You are dragging your suitcase from the metro to your hotel. The wheels are violently catching on unbelievably uneven, shattered paving stones, and you are wondering why you didn't just go to Vienna.
The reality check.
Hour 6 is awe. You've dropped your bags, you're walking without the luggage, you stumble into the Roman ruins of Serdika, and you realize the real historical weight of the city.
Okay, so it gets better.
By hour 12, the click happens. You sit down at a local tavern, the heavy red wine is flowing, a massive plate of grilled meat arrives for a fraction of what it would cost back home, and the city's chaotic charm suddenly makes perfect sense.
And the next morning.
The ultimate validation. You walk into a bakery, hand over a couple of coins, and walk out with a fresh banitsa and an espresso. In that moment, the value proposition of Sofia is permanently cemented in your mind.
It's literally the exact emotional arc of a really awkward blind date. At first, they're stumbling over their words, they spill a drink, you notice they have a scuff on their shoes, and you're thinking of making an excuse to leave. But by the time dessert arrives, they've told a fascinating story, they're deeply charming, and you realize you are having an incredible time.
That is a perfect analogy.
But before we even get to the hotel to drop those bags, we need to address the very first place people get scammed. What is the taxi confidence trap at the airport?
This trap relies entirely on the psychology of the traveler. Because Sofia has such a pervasive reputation as a cheap destination, travelers inherently let their guard down.
They assume the cheapness applies to everything.
Exactly. They assume the cheapness is universal. So they walk out of the terminal, a guy in a lanyard asks if they need a taxi, and they just say yes, assuming the worst case scenario is like a €15 ride.
Yeah.
They get to the hotel, and the driver hands them a mathematically fabricated bill for €60.
Ouch.
It happens constantly because unofficial touts prey on that specific confidence. The mechanism to defeat it is absolute discipline. You have to ignore every human being who approaches you in the arrivals hall, walk directly to the yellow official taxi stand, or strictly use an app where the fare is algorithmically locked in before you even open the car door.
So, to survive that potentially jarring first 24 hours without getting escorted or snapping the wheels off your suitcase, you need a sanctuary. The neighborhood you choose to drop your bags in dictates everything about your trip. Let's map out the accommodation zones and the specific economics of where to stay in 2026.
Okay, so the golden rule of booking accommodation in Sofia is that the geographic zone matters infinitely more than the star rating of the building.
Zone over stars.
You must prioritize geography over amenities. The ultimate base camps for a first-time visitor are tightly clustered. You want to be around the Serdika Metro hub, near the National Theater with its beautiful surrounding parks, in the quiet residential grids immediately branching off Vitosha Boulevard, or in the highly atmospheric, slightly quieter blocks between the Alexander Nevsky Cathedral and Sofia University.
Let me guess. It's because the public transit, while cheap, isn't something you want to rely on for every single movement. You want walking access.
Exactly. These zones put you within a 15-minute walk of the best independent cafes, the major museums, the key historical ruins, and the primary transit nodes. You want the ability to step out of your front door and immediately be immersed in the city's pulse.
What areas should we avoid?
You must avoid the immediate vicinity of the main railway and bus stations as a base. It seems logically appealing because of transit connections, especially if you plan to take a train to Plovdiv later.
Yeah, that would be my first thought.
But the reality is that the architecture is bleak, the dining options are dismal, and the area takes on a distinctly edgy, uncomfortable atmosphere after dark. It lacks all the charm that makes Sofia worthwhile.
Let's run the numbers and look at the specific tiers for these central zones, starting at the bottom with the backpacker tier.
The backpacker ecosystem in Sofia is legendary. Hostel remains the absolute unquestioned institution. It has been the hub for Balkan backpackers for decades.
And what are we paying there?
The dorm beds there range from 15 to 25 euros a night. They offer private budget rooms as well, which scale higher. But you aren't paying for thread count or luxury. You are paying for the central location, the massive communal energy, and the ability to keep your daily burn rate incredibly low.
Are there private options that aren't hostels?
If you want a private room but still have a strict budget, there are independent budget hotels and guest houses in the 35 to 60 euro range.
But this is where the fixer-upper reality hits hard, doesn't it? Because in that 40 euro tier, you are rolling the dice. You might get a charming little family-run pension with lace curtains, or you might get a room featuring a sagging mattress from 1985 and a shower head that drains directly onto the bathroom floor.
Yeah, that wet room bathroom style is very common in older Bulgarian buildings, and it totally shocks a lot of Western travelers. You absolutely must scrutinize recent date-stamped reviews for any property under 60 euros.
Good tip. What about the mid-range tier?
The mid-range tier is where you find the highest concentration of genuine value. You should realistically budget 80 to 140 euros per night.
What does that unlock?
This bracket unlocks properties like the Roslin Thracia Hotel, which is a brilliant strategic base if you want to be right near the pedestrian zone of Vitosha Boulevard without paying premium luxury rates. There is the Art Hotel, which is a classic, comfortable choice nearby. Or, if you want a calmer, more institutional vibe, the Kupop Hotel Sofia sits closer to the cathedral and the government district.
So you're getting actual comfort here.
In the mid-range tier, you aren't buying opulent romance. You are purchasing functional modern air conditioning, reliable winter heating, a pristine bathroom, and the crucial ability to walk everywhere without relying on taxis.
And what if I am dragging a family of 4 into this city? Kids need space, they make noise, and cramming into a boutique hotel room usually ends in tears.
Families have 2 distinct paths. You can look at large footprint hotels like the Novotel Sofia. It provides massive modern comfort, familiar Western amenities, and highly efficient road access. But you trade away the atmospheric charm of waking up in the deep historic center.
And the other path.
The far better alternative is targeting service departments right in the Serdika or Vitosha zones. These range from 90 to 180 euros depending on the square footage and the season. They grant you the physical space, the kitchen to mitigate the cost of feeding children 3 times a day, and the laundry facilities that families inevitably need after a muddy hike on Vitosha.
Okay, let's look at the top end. Luxury in Sofia seems like a fascinating paradox because it costs a fraction of Western Europe. But the city outside the lobby doors is still so gritty.
It is a paradox. The luxury tier operates in the 160 to 320 euro range. You have iconic modern landmarks like the Sense Hotel Sofia, which is famous for its rooftop bar offering unobstructed cinematic views of the cathedral domes.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
There is the colossal Grand Hotel Millennium Sofia, towering near the National Palace of Culture, offering massive spa facilities and international sheen. Or the Intercontinental Sofia, which delivers the polished, predictable, high-end landmark experience.
200 euros for an intercontinental.
Right. When you put a 200 euro price tag up against a comparable room in London, it feels like an outright steal. But when you step outside that marble lobby and buy a 1 euro coffee next to a crumbling wall, the economic disparity is jarring.
Let me bring some deduction into this. I am looking at hotel maps, and I see properties 3 or 4 miles out in the suburbs that are 15 or 20 euros cheaper per night than the central zones. If I'm on a tight budget, why shouldn't I just book the suburban hotel and use that incredibly cheap 1 euro metro to commute in every day? Justify the extra cost of the central zones for me.
I will argue forcefully against any suburban stay in Sofia. The minor financial savings, say 60 euros over a 3-day trip, are violently erased by the logistical friction and the death of spontaneity.
How so?
The true magic of a city like Sofia does not occur while you are enduring a 40-minute bus commute past Soviet-era industrial zones. The magic exists entirely in the unplanned interstitial moments between your scheduled stops.
Like what kind of moments?
It happens when you are walking back to your room to change shoes and you stumble into a hidden, sunken church courtyard at dusk. It happens when you walk past a small bakery window at 8 a.m. and the smell pulls you in. It happens when you get tired at 10 p.m. and realize your bed is only 3 streets away.
You lose all of that if you commute.
If you isolate yourself in the suburbs, you turn your vacation into a commuter exercise. You strip away the city's pulse and leave yourself with only the logistical burden.
That is the definitive answer. Pay for the geography. Don't turn your vacation into a commute.
Exactly.
So your central base camp is secured. The next absolute daily necessity is fuel. We need to talk about food. And eating in Sofia is not just about the menus. It carries its own deep cultural rules, its own etiquette, and its own massive hidden economies. Let's dig into the groceries, the bakeries, and the dining scene.
The foundation of cheap, incredible food in Sofia rests on 4 massive pillars: the bakery culture, the grill culture, the dairy economy, and the salads.
Talk to me about the bakeries.
The cuisine is unapologetically hearty. We have mentioned the banitsa multiple times, but we need to explain it. It is a warm, flaky, spiral pastry, heavily stuffed with sirene.
Sirene.
Yeah, sirene. It's a crumbly, briny white cheese, similar to feta, but distinctly Bulgarian. It is the absolute staple breakfast, and it costs 1 to 2 euros. A high-quality espresso or a strong Turkish coffee will run you 1.50 to 3 euros.
What about lunch and dinner?
If you want a casual sit-down lunch, perhaps a bowl of traditional soup, a massive salad, or a simple meat dish, you are spending 6 to 10 euros. And a proper, comfortable dinner in a traditional tavern, encompassing a starter, a heavy main course, and a local beer or glass of wine, will reliably land between 15 and 30 euros per person.
Those prices are phenomenal. But what is driving that? Why is the dairy so cheap and so prominent?
It comes down to Bulgaria's deep agricultural history. The yogurt and dairy culture here isn't a modern culinary trend. It is the bedrock of the national diet. The specific bacteria used to culture Bulgarian yogurt, Lactobacillus bulgaricus, is native to the region.
Oh, that's fascinating.
The production of sirene cheese and yogurt is so culturally entrenched and domestically produced that the prices remain incredibly low compared to imported Western goods.
And you see this reflected in the dishes, right?
Absolutely. You see this reflected in the must-have dishes. The absolute non-negotiable starter is the shopska salad. It sounds basic: chopped cucumbers, tomatoes, onions, and peppers. But the mechanism that makes it incredible is the mountain of finely grated sirene cheese piled on top. And the quality of the local tomatoes in the summer is astonishing.
And when it comes to the grills, I know the Balkans take meat very seriously.
Very seriously. The Ottoman historical layer is highly visible in the food. You must look for kifte and kebapçe. These are heavily spiced, grilled, minced meats. Kifte is round, kebapçe is cylindrical. They are ubiquitous, cheap, and deeply flavorful.
What about when it's really hot or cold out?
In the sweltering summer months, you relied on terator, which is a cold, refreshing soup made from yogurt, cucumbers, garlic, walnuts, and dill. In the deep gray winter, you pivot to the guveç, slow-cooked meat, and vegetable stews served in traditional clay pots.
Sounds amazing. But if I took our earlier advice and booked a service department with a kitchen, I don't have to eat at taverns every night. I have access to the supermarket economy. What does that look like in 2026?
The supermarket economy is where your daily costs absolutely plummet to the floor. The major players to look for are Billa, Lidl, Kaufland, Fantastico, and the hyper-budget tea market.
What are we actually paying for staples?
Let's examine the exact mechanism of these prices. Because of the strong domestic agricultural sector we just discussed, basic staples are aggressively cheap. A large 1.5-liter bottle of water is 50 cents to 1 euro. A fresh loaf of bread is 1 to 2 euros. A liter of local milk is 1.50. A carton of eggs sits between 2.50 and 4 euros. And local Bulgarian beer, bought in the supermarket, starts from just 1 euro a can.
So you could eat for next to nothing.
You can easily construct a massive, highly nutritious, self-catered breakfast or a picnic lunch for just 3 or 4 euros.
We have to talk about the human element of this, though. The etiquette and the cultural psychology of service. Because I've read that the customer service in Sofia can feel incredibly cold, almost borderline hostile to an American or a British traveler who expects the waiter to come over, introduce themselves by name, and smile constantly.
That is a critical cultural translation that travelers must understand. The lack of a performative, grinning service culture is not hostility.
Okay, so what is it?
It is a complex mix of Eastern European reserve, a lingering Soviet-era service mentality where the worker wasn't incentivized to flatter the customer, and a general cultural norm that overly smiling at a stranger is actually considered suspicious or insincere.
That makes a lot of sense when you put it like that. Is there a way to bridge that gap?
Yes, you possess the mechanism to instantly break that ice language. If you take the time to learn to say "Благодаря," which is a rather formal, beautiful way of saying thank you, it genuinely disrupts their expectation of an ignorant tourist. You will visibly see the wall drop, and the interaction becomes much warmer.
And what's the rule on tipping?
Regarding tipping, in restaurants with table service, 10% is the standard expectation when the service is competent.
What about etiquette outside the restaurants? How do we navigate the monuments and the churches?
The religious and historical spaces demand acute awareness. Do not walk into an Orthodox church and blindly start taking photos with a flash. Many have strict prohibitions or require you to pay a small fee for a photography permit. Dress conservatively when entering religious spaces.
And the communist monuments.
Crucially, you must respect the physical remnants of the communist era. The brutalist monuments and statues are complex, often painful historical artifacts for the local population. Do not treat them as ironic jungle gyms or joke props for your social media feed.
Oh, absolutely. A little respect goes a long way. Are there any dietary restrictions we should cover?
A logistical note on food. The traditional cuisine is unapologetically meat-heavy. Vegetarians have to navigate tavern menus very carefully, often surviving entirely on shopska salads and cheese dishes. Vegans do have fantastic modern options now, especially in the newer hipster-leaning cafes around the center, but let's be absolutely clear, Sofia is not Berlin. You have to research your vegan spots in advance.
Let me bring up a visual trap that I guarantee catches 80% of first-time visitors. You are walking down the main pedestrian artery, Vitosha Boulevard. You see these massive, heavily themed traditional restaurants. They have rustic wooden wheels out front, waiters holding menus in 5 languages, and massive patio heaters.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right, it feels to me exactly like eating in Times Square in New York.
Yeah.
It is incredibly convenient because you are already standing there, but it must be an absolute misrepresentation of the city's culinary soul.
Your deduction is flawless. Eating a full meal on the main drag of Vitosha Boulevard is a fundamental economic error. You are not paying for the quality of the chef. You are paying a massive premium for the real estate and the privilege of watching other tourists walk past.
And the food.
The food will be mechanically produced and devoid of soul. The authentic, incredible value meals, the ones where the meat is grilled perfectly and the bill makes you smile, are happening literally 2 or 3 streets over. You just have to walk into the quiet residential grids where the local office workers and families actually spend their money.
Okay, so we've added up the €2 bonitas, the €1 supermarket beers, the €1 metro tickets, and the €20 dinners. It is time to synthesize this into the ultimate daily out-of-pocket budget, because this is the core of our mission. What is it actually going to cost me per day in 2026?
We have modeled the exact 2026 daily spend across 5 distinct traveler personas. Let's start with the backpacker.
All right, lay it out.
For them, the daily burn rate is 35 to 50 euros. The mechanism of that budget looks like this. 15 to 25 euros secures a bed in a vibrant dorm like Hostel. The food budget is 10 to 16 euros, which mandates a bakery breakfast, supermarket snacks for lunch, and maybe one cheap local tavern meal or street food wrap for dinner. Transport is 2 to 4 euros, utilizing the metro and trams exclusively. Cheap museum entries or tipping a free walking tour guide takes 3 to 8 euros. And they have a €5 buffer for coffee, a bottle of water, or doing a load of laundry.
That is highly disciplined, but entirely realistic if they avoid heavy nightlife drinking, which is an astonishingly low number for a European capital. But what about the mid-range traveler, the person who wants a real mattress, a private bathroom, and to eat at a table with a tablecloth?
The mid-range tier sits beautifully at 75 to 120 euros per person per day. The math assumes you are traveling as a couple and splitting the cost of a central hotel room, so your share of the accommodation is 40 to 70 euros. Your food budget expands to 25 to 40 euros, which easily covers a cafe breakfast, a sit-down lunch, a comfortable dinner, and coffees, without ever needing to look at a supermarket.
That gives you a lot of freedom.
It does. Transport is 3 to 15 euros, providing the financial slack to hail a taxi if it starts raining or your feet hurt, and you have 10 to 25 euros for major attractions, church crypts, and extras. This is the most honest, comfortable band for experiencing Sofia, and it is a fraction of what you would bleed in Western Europe.
Let's scale it up. I am looking at the data for a family of 4.
A family of 4 is looking at a total daily spend of 220 to 380 euros. Securing a large family apartment or a dual-room hotel setup will consume 100 to 200 euros. Feeding 4 people will run 70 to 130 euros, assuming an intelligent mix of bakery breakfasts, perhaps one supermarket picnic lunch, and casual sit-down dinners.
And transit for 4.
Transport remains fundamentally cheap, but we factor in a higher taxi budget because the reality of exhausted kids navigating uneven pavements inevitably requires a cab ride back to the apartment.
And the luxury tier. We touched on this earlier, but what does that money actually buy?
Luxury is 180 to 350 euros per person per per day. Your share of a high-end room at the Sense or Intercontinental is 80 to 160 euros. The remainder of the budget is deployed on the absolute top-tier restaurants the city has to offer, rooftop cocktails at sunset, private seamless airport transfers, extensive spa treatments, and curated private day trips to surrounding monasteries or wineries.
That's a lot of luxury for that price point.
If we connect this to the broader philosophy of travel, the luxury tier in Sofia is what I define as value luxury. You are paying dramatically less than you would at a five-star property in Paris, but the trade-off is that you must manage more inherent friction.
The grid outside the door.
Exactly. The service within the hotel might be excellent, but the infrastructure immediately outside the revolving glass doors is still gritty, noisy, and unpolished. It is luxury, but it is heavily grounded in the raw reality of a Balkan city.
That leaves our final persona, and this one is fascinating. The digital nomad.
For a digital nomad committing to a full 1-month stay, the budget is 1,300 to 2,200 euros. A short-term apartment rental in a central zone fully furnished with reliable internet will cost between 600 and 1,100 euros depending on the modernity of the build.
That's very reasonable rent.
Groceries and dining out will consume 350 to 600 euros. The remainder of the budget easily covers co-working space memberships, mobile data plans, a gym membership, daily cafe coffees, and weekend entertainment.
Okay, let me bring some serious pushback to this digital nomad tier. We discussed the meteorology earlier. We talked about how heavily gray, smoggy, and moody the winter is. If I am a digital nomad looking for a cheap European base, is spending a month in Sofia during January or February actually going to feel like a fun, vibrant adventure? Or does it rapidly degrade into an isolating psychological endurance test where I am just trapped inside my 800 euro apartment to avoid the toxic slush outside?
Your concern is completely valid, and it is a massive risk. Sofia in the deep winter can exert a very heavy psychological toll.
So it's not for everyone.
If you arrive without a pre-existing social network, the combination of short daylight hours, the pollution inversion haze, the biting cold, and the general gray aesthetic of the brutalist suburbs can feel incredibly isolating.
But in the spring,
Oh, Sofia works brilliantly as a nomad base in the spring. It offers EU-adjacent value, phenomenally fast internet infrastructure, and great mountain access. But I highly recommend that nomads strictly target the spring and autumn windows to actually enjoy the outdoor, communal, urban rhythm. Surviving the winter requires a very specific, highly resilient mindset.
good to know.
Yeah.
But regardless of your budget, whether you are the 35 euro backpacker counting every coin or the 300 euro luxury traveler buying your way out of inconvenience, there are 3 specific, highly dangerous potholes in this city that can instantly drain your wallet and absolutely tank your morale. We need to dissect the 3 named logistics traps of Sofia.
These are critical to internalize because they exploit the natural blind spots of travelers. Trap number 1. The airport taxi confidence trap. We touched on the mechanism of this earlier.
Right, assuming cheap means cheap everywhere.
Exactly. It works specifically because of Sofia's reputation as a budget destination. Travelers internalize the cheap label, their critical thinking shuts down, and they assume that any yellow car waiting at the curb will automatically be cheap. The lived reality is that stepping into an unofficial, unmetered cab can turn a standard 15 euro fare into a 60 euro extortion scenario, resulting in an incredibly angry, stressful arrival.
And the fix?
The fix is absolute, unyielding discipline. Use the daytime metro, strictly use the official taxi rank with the mandated operator, or use a legitimate ride-hailing app where the fare is transparent.
Don't let the cheap label make you lazy. What is trap number 2?
Trap number 2, the Vitosha Boulevard value trap. Again, the mechanism here is visibility, fatigue, and convenience. Vitosha Boulevard is the main highly attractive pedestrian spine of the city. You have been walking for 6 hours, your feet hurt, the menus are printed in English, and the patios look inviting.
So you just sit down?
But the reality is that if you sit down, you will pay double the local price for a plate of pasta that is remarkably mediocre, or a piece of grilled meat that is dry and uninspired. You will leave that table convinced that Bulgarian food is overrated and overpriced.
How do we avoid it?
Use Vitosha Boulevard for what it is good for: orienting yourself, grabbing a quick coffee, and doing some excellent people watching. But when you are actually hungry for a meal, walk 3 streets east or west into the residential grids.
Which brings us to trap number 3. And looking at the geography, I think this one is the most physically deceptive. The Vitosha Mountain spontaneity trap.
It is entirely deceptive, and it preys on visual perspective. When you are standing in the city center, Vitosha Mountain looks like it is right there. It looms massively over the southern edge of Sofia. The psychological mechanism is that travelers look at it and treat it like a casual city park. They think, oh, it's a nice afternoon, let's just pop up the mountain for a couple hours before dinner.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because this is where the geography completely betrays you. Looking at that mountain and deciding to just pop up seems like deciding to run a half marathon in flip-flops just because the running trail looks really close from your hotel balcony. It's not a park. It's a literal mountain.
It is a massive, serious piece of alpine nature. The peak is over 2,200 meters high, and the lived reality of attempting a spontaneous trip is almost always a disaster. You will encounter confusing, multi-stage transport logistics just to reach the base.
If the lifts are even running.
Right. You might find the chairlifts are closed for maintenance or high winds. The weather at the top can be 15 degrees colder and violently windy compared to the sunny city center. You will find yourself facing muddy, steep trail conditions and smooth city sneakers. Suddenly, your casual afternoon turns into hours of freezing, waiting around, and eventually paying for an expensive taxi to rescue you.
Okay, so plan ahead.
The fix is meticulous preparation. You must check the specific mountain weather forecast that morning. You must pick a highly specific, manageable target for your fitness and footwear, like the historic Bojana Church at the base or the hike to Bojana Waterfall. And you must never, ever attempt an ascent late in the afternoon wearing inappropriate clothing.
That makes total sense.
These three traps, the taxi, the boulevard, and the mountain, they all share the exact same underlying mechanism. They exploit a traveler's fatigue, their desire for immediate convenience, and a lack of situational awareness.
They actively punish you for putting your brain in neutral. And navigating those traps requires a high level of constant awareness, which leads us seamlessly into discussing the realities of daily safety and comfort on the streets. Because when we talk about safety in Sofia, we aren't really talking about violent crime, we are talking about the physical friction you encounter just trying to walk down the street.
Exactly. Sofia is a highly manageable city, but its primary risk profile is almost entirely defined by everyday urban friction, not violent crime directed at tourists. You are not generally walking around worried about being mugged in a dark alleyway.
So what are the risks?
The risks are mundane yet deeply frustrating. It is the threat of pickpocketing in the crowded tourist bottlenecks or on packed rush hour trams. It is the severely poor condition of the municipal pavements, where a loose tile or a hidden pothole can easily twist an ankle. It is the stressful, highly aggressive traffic culture where pedestrian crossings are often treated as mere suggestions by drivers.
Looking at those friction points, what is the reality for solo female travelers? How viable is this city for them?
It is highly viable, provided they follow the geographic rules we established. The key is the zone. If a solo female traveler secures a central base, utilizes the metro or legitimate tracked taxi apps instead of hailing cars on the street, and exercises standard urban common sense, the risk profile is very low.
Are there specific spots to avoid?
The primary infrastructure elements to actively avoid are the poorly lit pedestrian underpasses at night, of which there are many, as they were built to bypass the massive boulevards, and the immediate vicinity of the main train and bus stations after dark. Sofia does not offer the glossy, effortlessly safe-feeling polish of a city like Copenhagen, but it is absolutely not a no-go zone.
I want to bring up families again, because looking at this friction, the violently uneven pavements, the necessity of using stairs to navigate the underpasses, the aggressive traffic, is Sofia essentially the equivalent of a black diamond ski slope for families? What I mean is, if you're a veteran traveling family who's used to a bit of chaos, you can navigate it and have an incredible adventure. But if you're beginners expecting the pristine, ramp-accessible, stroller-friendly polish of Vienna, you are going to crash and burn within 4 hours.
Your deduction is absolutely correct. It is a black diamond slope for parents. You have to be highly selective and brutally honest about your family's resilience.
It's not for the faint of heart.
Sofia possesses great sprawling parks. The food is cheap and generally very kid-friendly, and riding the old trams is fun. But it fundamentally lacks stroller friendliness in the older historic districts. Pushing a double stroller over cracked paving stones and hauling it up subway stairs is an athletic feat. Furthermore, there is a very prominent, unfiltered smoking culture in the outdoor spaces, which heavily bothers many visiting Western families.
So who's it good for?
Sofia is a fantastic playground for older children. Kids who can walk miles on their own, who are genuinely interested in exploring Roman ruins, who find the metro exciting, or who are capable of hiking up a mountain trail, But for parents trying to manage toddlers who require smooth surfaces and pristine playgrounds, it is going to be exhausting logistical warfare.
What about the healthcare infrastructure? Just in case the Black Diamond Slope wins and someone does twist an ankle on those pavements or you get caught out on the mountain?
The healthcare infrastructure is decent, with both sprawling public hospitals and highly modern private clinics available in the capital. Pharmacies are ubiquitous on almost every corner, and the younger pharmacists generally speak functional English.
That's reassuring.
However, comprehensive travel insurance is absolutely non-negotiable. If you sprain an ankle on Vitosha or suffer a sudden dental emergency, you want immediate, unquestioned access to the private clinics. You do not want to rely on the public system, and you should never assume that official administrative interactions, like at a public hospital reception desk, will be smooth, empathetic, or conducted in English.
Good to know. So it really is all about managing friction.
The ultimate takeaway regarding safety and comfort is that Sofia heavily rewards awareness and preparation. It punishes laziness far less financially than London or Paris would, but it punishes it intensely logistically.
But if a traveler is listening to this, and they are willing to brave those uneven pavements, if they're willing to navigate the logistical hurdles, do the research, and put the mental work in, what are the actual rewards? We promised an honest verdict. Let's talk about the genuine highs and the stark lows. What makes the trip deeply worthwhile, and what is going to leave people underwhelmed?
Let's start with the absolute, undeniable highs. The ultimate moment in Sofia, the visual sequence that anchors the city emotionally for almost every visitor, is standing in the square near the Alexander Nevsky Cathedral when the light hits precisely right.
That golden hour lighting.
Yes. It usually happens in the warm, late afternoon golden hour. The sunlight catches those massive gold domes, and it briefly makes the entire chaotic city feel incredibly grand, solemn, and historic. It is not just a cheap photo op. The sheer scale of it possesses a cinematic weight. Exploring the immediate area around it, the ancient red brick St. Sophia Church, the nearby antique flea market, it forms the city's most profound visual memory.
And then there's the Serdika complex, which just blows my mind from an urban planning perspective.
Serdika is incredibly powerful because of its casual integration into modern life. During the excavation for the metro system, they uncovered massive sections of the ancient Roman city. But instead of fencing it off behind glass like an untouchable, sterile museum exhibit in Rome or London, they integrated it directly into the daily commuter concourse.
So you're literally commuting through history.
You have people walking past 2,000-year-old stone arches while sipping a €1 espresso on their way to an office job. The stratigraphy, the physical layering of history, is visible right beneath your feet.
That sounds incredible.
Another profound high is observing the local rhythm at the central mineral baths. You can stand there and watch residents of all ages, from teenagers to grandmothers, lining up to fill massive plastic jugs with the hot, sulfurous mineral water that flows continuously from the public taps. Witnessing that unbroken, everyday ritual provides a much deeper, more authentic connection to the city's actual life than reading any polished placard in a museum ever could.
Okay, those are the rewards for putting in the work. But what are the lows? What is going to genuinely disappoint people?
The honest disappointments are stark, and they usually stem from mismatched expectations. We've heavily critiqued Vitosha Boulevard. It is lively, it is central, and it is a good orienting landmark. But architecturally and culturally, it is highly repetitive, heavily westernized, and massively overvalued.
Right. What else?
Then there is the National Palace of Culture, known locally as the NDK. It is monumental in its scale. It's this massive, sprawling, brutalist concrete structure set at the end of the park. From a historical and architectural standpoint, it is fascinating, but many visitors find its sheer bulk to be deeply imposing, cold, and ugly rather than beautiful.
I can see how that wouldn't appeal to everyone.
Furthermore, the museum culture can be underwhelming if you arrive expecting the slick, highly interactive, high-budget curation you find in Berlin or Amsterdam. Many of Sofia's exhibits are still presented in a very traditional, static, text-heavy manner. And finally, the overall streetscape itself. In bad weather, the combination of gray skies, imposing concrete, graffiti, and cracked pavements can visually degrade into an incredibly tired, bleak aesthetic.
But, listening to you map out these extreme highs and bleak lows, it's the staggering juxtapositions that seem to define the entire identity of the place. You're standing there listening to ancient, beautiful Orthodox chants echoing out of a gold-domed church, and then you turn your head and look past a stark, bleak, socialist apartment block, just so you can walk down to catch a hyper-modern metro train that costs €1. Is the city's charm precisely because it isn't tricked to package itself neatly for tourists? Is the chaos the actual feature?
What's fascinating here is that is the exact brilliant core of Sofia's appeal. It leaves its history completely raw, unvarnished, and exposed. The Roman ruins are casually wedged beneath modern government buildings. The delicate Neo-Byzantine churches sit in the direct shadow of imposing brutalist monuments. The city does not guide your hand.
It's raw.
It does not provide a neat, cohesive narrative plaque telling you exactly how to feel about its complex past. It requires you, the traveler, to do the emotional and intellectual lifting. It asks you to synthesize these wild contradictions yourself. And because you are forced to work for that understanding, the memory of the city lodges itself in your brain much deeper and lasts much longer than a prepackaged, effortless tourist experience.
But let's be completely real with our listeners. If that raw, unpolished, do-the-emotional-lifting vibe sounds like way too much work for your precious 5 days of vacation time, you don't have to force yourself to endure it. There are two distinct, highly viable alternatives in the immediate region that might suit your psychological needs a lot better. Let's break down Plovdiv and Bucharest.
Yes, if the description of Sofia's grit and friction sounds exhausting, alternative one is Plovdiv. It is Bulgaria's second largest city, located roughly 2 hours away, and it offers dramatically more immediate, accessible charm.
Tell me more about Plovdiv.
It features a stunningly preserved, highly colorful, cobbled old town built on a series of hills. It boasts an incredible ancient Roman theater with views over the valley. It operates at a much slower, more romantic, and pedestrian-friendly pace.
Are the prices similar?
The baseline prices for food and accommodation are very similar to Sofia, perhaps even slightly cheaper in certain spots. However, Sofia retains the advantage of vastly superior international flight connections and a much more complex, layered urban depth.
So if we are comparing them, Plovdiv is like the Instagram filter version of the Balkans, where the colors are saturated, the history is perfectly preserved, and everything looks romantic, while Sofia is the raw, handheld, shaky cam documentary.
I wouldn't call Plovdiv an Instagram filter because that implies the beauty is fake or superficial. Plovdiv's history is incredibly deep. It is one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in Europe. It just happens to be physically preserved and presented in a way that is much easier to consume. It is tailored for couples, culture-first travelers, and anyone who wants historical beauty without the exhaust fumes, the broken pavements, and the capital city grit.
What about Alternative 2?
Alternative 2 requires looking across the border to Bucharest in Romania. You choose Bucharest if you want massive, overwhelming urban scale. It offers grand, Paris-style boulevards, a much larger metropolitan feel, an incredibly aggressive and chaotic nightlife scene, and a very strong, big weekend-out energy. The central zones of Bucharest are generally more expensive than Sofia, but it still represents fantastic economic value by broader European standards.
So how does a traveler sitting at home actually choose between them?
The choice comes down to time and temperament. If you have 5 or 6 days to deploy, the absolute optimal strategy is to fly into Sofia, spend 2 intensely active days absorbing the grit and the ruins, and then take the bus or train down to Plovdiv for 3 days of relaxation. You get to experience both the raw documentary and the preserved romance.
And if you only have a weekend?
If you only have a strict 48-hour weekend, Sofia is logistically far easier to execute because of the brilliant airport metro connection. Ultimately, the psychological diagnostic is this. If you want a city that flatters your eyes immediately the moment you drop your bags, choose Plovdiv. If you want a city that makes you work hard for your discoveries, choose Sofia.
Okay. We have pulled every single thread. We have unpacked the complex agricultural economics keeping the food cheap. We've analyzed the meteorological traps of the valley. We've exposed the taxi mafia. We've mapped the exact accommodation zones, and we've weighed the alternatives. It is time to bring all of this data together and answer the title question of our show. We are going to run through the matrix. For our 5 specific traveler personas in 2026, is Sofia genuinely worth it? Let's start with the backpacker.
For the backpacker, the answer is a resounding, definitive why yes. Sofia remains one of the absolute strongest capital city choices on the European continent. The sheer economic value of a €15 hostel bed, a €2 traditional bakery breakfast, and a €1 metro ticket to cross the city is fundamentally unbeatable. The only caveat is that if they abandon discipline and fall into lazy tourist restaurant traps or heavy Western-priced nightlife venues, they will shatter that cheap day illusion instantly.
What about the mid-range couple? The people who want comfort but aren't wealthy?
The verdict is yes, with strict conditions. It is a fantastic, high-value city break if they execute the logistics perfectly. They must book a central hotel in the Serdika or university zones. They must commit to walking a few streets away from Vitosha Boulevard to eat. And they absolutely must target the meteorological sweet spots of May, June, September, or early October. If they arrive in November expecting effortless, polished romance, they will be deeply disappointed.
The family. The parents dragging the kids.
Also, yes, with conditions. The incredibly low costs, the easy airport transport, and the highly accessible, kid-friendly food make it an economic savior for the family budget. But the physical friction of the city, the violently broken pavements, the ubiquitous smoking culture, the aggressive traffic means the destination is heavily weighted toward families with older, more resilient children. It is absolutely not recommended for parents trying to navigate a double stroller.
And the luxury traveler. The one looking for five-star perfection.
The answer here is a blunt no. Unless their highly specific goal is value luxury, meaning they strictly want 5-star hotel amenities at a 3-star price point, Sofia simply cannot match the seamless service depth, the Michelin-level restaurant polish, or the pristine, immaculate cultural packaging of a Paris, a Vienna, or a Rome. The underlying grit and friction of the city will inevitably bleed into and compromise their luxury experience.
And finally, the digital nomad or solo traveler planning a longer stay.
The verdict is yes. The city is highly compact, it is immensely practical, and it possesses deep, engaging layers. They get urban grit, fantastic cafes, blazing internet, and immediate mountain access. The singular condition is that they must avoid the deep, heavy, isolating gray smog of the winter months, which can severely impact their psychological morale.
So what does this all mean? Looking at this entire matrix, I think I finally understand what Sofia actually is. It isn't just a destination, it's a mirror. It reflects exactly how much effort, planning, and curiosity the traveler is willing to project onto it. If you put in low effort, if you just show up, take the first taxi you see, eat on the main street, and complain about the pavements, you get a scruffy, frustrating, mediocre trip. But if you put in the intellectual work, read the history, walk the side streets, and embrace the contradictions, you get a brilliant, profoundly underpriced adventure.
You have perfectly summarized the mechanism of the city. Because true travel value isn't just a basic mathematical equation about spending less money. True value is defined by the depth, the emotional resonance, and the authenticity of the experience you manage to purchase with that money.
That's a great point.
We exist in an era where almost every major European destination has been perfectly curated, heavily smoothed over, and meticulously packaged for effortless social media consumption. In that landscape, there is something incredibly vital and necessary about a place that actively resists that packaging. Perhaps the friction you encounter, the cracked pavements you trip over, the jarring architectural contradictions, and the unvarnished raw reality of a city like Sofia are exactly the elements required to forge genuine, lasting travel memories. The city forces you to wake up, pay attention, and be entirely present in the moment.
If this gave you the honest verdict you needed, follow the show. New episodes drop every day.
That is the honest verdict from Phil and H.